So last shiur we discussed the brachot as the building blocks of tefillah. We said that all tefillot that we have, all the, we might call it the liturgical landscape, is built of small nucleus elements called brachot. And sometimes we have long sets of brachot, we have short sets of brachot. Sometimes the bracha itself could be long, it could be short, but that is what tefillot are made out of. We pointed out the uniqueness of the Amidah, where we have a set of brachot that stand alone. Unlike all the other brachot that are a phenomena that accompanies something, either an emotional state or a mitzvah or an occurrence or something unusual that happened. There is a trigger, and around that we have brachot. The Amidah, we all of a sudden in the middle of the day or the beginning of the day or the end of the day, we all of a sudden we just stand and say brachot, we daven to Hashem, and that is the uniqueness of tefillah that surrounds the connection with Hashem itself. We discussed the different parts of the bracha, the word baruch in particular, and the significance of atah, of having a relationship, a dialogue with Hashem, and the fact that we mention Hashem's name, and the fact that we mention malchut, and I'm going to get back to it today because, surprisingly enough, we have that same thing in Rosh Hashanah's tefillah as a bracha that stands to itself, malchuyot. And then we mentioned the general structure of the Amidah, which has 3 introductory brachot and 3 concluding brachot, and then we have the middle, which on a weekday has 13 blessings, brachot of asking Hashem of different things, and on Chagim and on Shabbatot and Yamim Tovim, there is one bracha that encapsulates the significance of the day itself. So that is the Amidah. And then we said we have one Yotzei min haklal, one exception, and that is Mussaf on Rosh Hashanah. Also, Mussaf on Rosh Hashanah doesn't have one bracha, it has 3 brachot, zichronot, malchuyot, and shofarot. And the question is, why 3? Why not like every Yom Tov? Even Yom Kippur has only one bracha in the middle, and Rosh Hashanah we need 3. Where did these brachot come from? So this is what we're starting with today, and what we are going to do is I'm going to discuss the malchuyot, zichronot, v'shofarot, but first we're going to discuss the very structure, meaning how do we get to such a structure, what is the making of the structure without discussing its meaning. Then once we understand the making of the structure we have a better understanding of that, I'm going to discuss the meaning, the very meaning of malchuyot, zichronot, shofarot, what they mean, and that would probably give us an answer why we need three different brachot. So before we start discussing malchuyot, zichronot, v'shofarot, I want to say something about tefillat Rosh Hashanah in general. There is nothing surprising about tefillat Rosh Hashanah from a structural point of view until we get to Mussaf. We open the Machzor, we find ordinary tefillot like any other chag. Now, I don't want us to be confused by the piyutim, because there are a lot of additional piyutim that we find throughout the tefillah. The piyutim are later additions to the tefillah. They're not part of the skeleton. Now, we find them in Rosh Hashanah and in Yom Kippur, but if someone davened, let's say, in Broyers, then they didn't have only piyutim on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, right? You have also on the other chagim, you have piyutim. You might have them during the Amidah, you might have them during the repetition of the Amidah, you might have them during the brachot of Kriyat Shema, you have them, right, Ma'aravis, Yosros, right, all these different piyutim, we have them on many chagim. In most shuls, it was all taken out generally, except for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Shavuot. Maybe we have some, not in the tefillah, the akdamut, okay, maybe no, and? No, well, not quite. Tisha B'Av. Okay, right? The Kinot, they're also piyutim. Okay, so that is so we don't. I don't want us to get confused by the piyutim that we're going to discuss later. We're going to discuss that not today and not next shiur, but the shiur after that. We're going to discuss piyutim, and that is going to be an important shiur because what makes the Machzor so thick are mainly the piyutim. So we have to discuss that. So we'll get there, but not today, not next shiur, the shiur after that. So once we remove the piyutim out of the way and we look at the skeleton of davening, there is nothing surprising about the structure of tefillah of Rosh Hashanah. It's the same exact structure that we find every day, right? The same Birkot HaShachar, the same, everything is the same. Okay, and the Amidah itself is also the same. We have 3 introductory brachot, 1 bracha in the middle, Dushat Hayom, and then the 3 summarizing brachot. Again, we have a long Chazarat Hashatz, but that is because Chazarat Hashatz is not just a repetition. There are a lot of piyutim added to Chazarat Hashatz. But if we look at the skeleton of Chazarat Hashatz, it's the exact same Amidah that we said quietly, each person to themselves. Okay, so nothing surprising about that. Then we get to Mussaf, and all of a sudden in Mussaf, what happens? All of a sudden we have 3 brachot, Malchuyot, Zichronot, Shofarot. Now, before Mussaf, we have the regular Kriyat Torah, then we have Tkiyat Shofar. Okay, Tkiyat Shofar we know is a special mitzvah on Rosh Hashanah. On Sukkot we have Lulav, that's also somewhere in the middle of the Tefillah. Okay, so that's not surprising. We have to understand its significance, and that is what we're going to do next week when we're going to discuss the sound of the shofar. But then after that we start Mussaf, and in Mussaf we have Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofarot. Where does this come from? So let's start with the first source. I want to discuss what the first, we look at the Tanaitic source. These are the earliest sources that we have that discuss what we say, and we will see that the structure was not obvious. It wasn't obvious that there are different discussions in the Sifri, in the Sifa. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I went right to the Sifra. I have to first read the Pasuk. So let's first look at the Pasuk of Rosh Hashanah in Vayikra. That is the first source. So on the 7th month, that is the month of Tishrei, that is the first of the month, Shabbaton. So we have a Shabbaton, that it means a Yom Tov, right? Zichron, Tru'ah, Mikra Kodesh. Okay, so we have the words Zichron and the word Tru'ah. So that rings familiar. So if I'm thinking about Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofarot, I could say, Zichronot and Shofarot are probably connected to this Zichron Tru'ah. So Tru'ah is a shofar because that is what we do the Tru'ah with. Zichron is Zichronot. So we have already Zichronot and Shofarot. But now the question is, where did Malchuyot come from? Because the Torah doesn't say anything about Malchuyot. Not in this pasuk nor in any other pasuk that is related to Rosh Hashanah. So let's see the discussion in the Sifra. So Shabbaton Zichron Mikra Kodesh. It mentions that pasuk, but basically we have four different things said about this day of Rosh Hashanah. We have Shabbaton, Zichron, Tru'ah, Mikra Kodesh. Now, the words Shabbaton and Mikra Kodesh are not special to Rosh Hashanah. Shabbaton and Mikra Kodesh we have almost in every Chag. That is what the Torah tells us about each and every Chag. It's a Yom Shabbaton and it's a Yom Mikra Kodesh. And also Rosh Hashanah. No, Yom Kippur is a Shabbaton. No, Shabbaton is, we have many Chagim that are Shabbaton. Yes. But Shabbaton is Yom Kippur. Okay, so Shabbaton and Mikra Kodesh are not extraordinary, but they're okay. But Zichron Tua is okay. So now Rabbi Eliezer Omer Shabbaton. What does that mean? Zok Dushat Hayom. Okay, the Sifra, which is a Midrash Halacha, the Sifra is a Tanaitic compilation that basically takes the different Midrashei Halacha. What is a Midrash Halacha? A Midrash Halacha takes the Psukim and it reads the Halachot, the actual bottom line of the Halacha, into the Psukim. So the assumption of this Sifra is that these Psukim are talking about the davening, the brachot, okay? So it says, Shabbaton, Zok Dushat Hayom. Okay, Shabbaton, that is where we derive the bracha of Kedushat Hayom from. What is Kedushat Hayom? So every Yom Tov, we have a bracha, the middle bracha of the Amidah is Kedushat Hayom. So too on Rosh Hashana, we have such a bracha of Kedushat Hayom. And that we learn from the word Shabbaton. Rabbi Akiva disagrees. He says, similarly, like Zikaron, Zichron, Elu Zichronot, Trua, Elu Shufarot. He says, yes, there are three brachot that we say. There is Zichron, because Zichronot we learn from the word Zichron. Shofarot we learn from the word Trua. And then from the word Mikra Kodesh, Zok Kedushat Hayom. Okay, so Kedushat Hayom I learned from the words Mikra Kodesh. What difference does it make whether I learn from the word Shabbaton or Mikra Kodesh? That is a discussion. We might get to it today, we might not, but it's less important to us. But then comes the key. Uminayin sheyeh kolel ima et hamalchuyot. Then comes the question. Where do we learn from that you include with Kedushat Hayom Malchuyot as well? But this question is double. Okay, it's a double question. A, we need a pasuk that says that we need Malchuyot altogether, but then that you include it with Kedushat Hayom. Okay, so says Rabbi Akiva, Talmud Lomar, Hashem Elokeichem, Ani Hashem Elokeichem, B'chodesh Hashvi'i. So the pasuk before this pasuk, Daber Bnei Yisrael Yemor B'chodesh Hashvi'i, the pasuk before that ends with the words Ani Hashem Elokeichem. He says Ani Hashem Elokeichem. Now Daber Bnei Yisrael B'chodesh Hashvi'i V'chad L'chodesh Yilachem Mikra Kodesh, meaning this Mikra Kodesh should be connected to Ani Hashem Elokeichem. Ani Hashem Elokeichem, meaning I am Hashem, your God meaning your sovereign, meaning your king, and therefore in Kedushat Hayom you include Malchuyot. Okay, this is a roundabout way to get to Malchuyot. It looks like Rabbi Akiva really wanted Malchuyot to be included. We'll have to figure out why. Okay, but that's what he says.
What was the definition of Malchuyot?
So that word we'll get to the end.
We'll
get to the end. Okay. Now we're talking about the structure and the meaning, and the meaning we'll get to the end. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ma Talmud Lomar והיו לכם לזיכרון לפני אלוקיכם, אני השם אלוקיכם, אלא זה בניין אב. כל מקום שאתה אומר זיכרונות, אתה סומך לה את המלכויות. Okay, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda learns it from a different place, and I'll explain what is that place. So we have a parasha in the Torah that is called Parashat HaChatzotzot. Okay, there is a parasha where Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, form 2 silver trumpets with which you are going to blow for various things. Okay, and that is where the word tu'ah comes up again and again, and the word tki'ah comes up, and that is where we learn many of the halachot of tki'ah and tu'ah. We learn from that parasha, even though it's talking about trumpets, it's not talking about shofar there, but it doesn't matter, it's talking about tu'ah. Okay, now there also the word zikaron is mentioned, because many of the tu'ot that are mentioned there in that parasha, not all of them, but some of them are also for zikaron. V'nizkartem lifnei Hashem Elokeichem. So there are 2 zichronot there. One is at times of distress or war, we need to dive into Hashem, so we blow the trumpets, and Hashem hears the trumpets and he remembers us. Okay, and then again on festivals and holidays, ובيום שמחתכם ובמועדיכם ובראשי חודשיכם ותקעתם בחצוצרות ונזכרתם לפני השם אלוקיכם. On happy days we also want Hashem to remember us. So we blow the trumpets, we do tu'ah with the trumpets, not shofar, they're trumpets, and Hashem remembers us. So now on Rosh Hashanah, it's the same thing. It's only with a shofar. There's a special thing with a shofar on Rosh Hashanah. But again, it's tu'ah for zikaron. And says Rabbi Yossi, I learned there that zichronot is coupled with malchuyot because it says, Ani Hashem Elokeichem. That is what the pasuk ends with. So I remember you, I'm Hashem. So I remember you, I'm Hashem goes together. So Hashem remembering and Hashem being our sovereign goes together. So when we mention anytime there is zichronot, it comes with malchuyot. That is Rabbi Yossi's explanation. So therefore, says Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, we have three things here. We have malchuyot, we have zichronot, we have shofarot, and we also have malchuyot because we learn it from that place. Okay, so we have different suggestions here in the Sifa. Where did malchuyot come from? But we will have to understand why is it so important that it comes, and what is the meaning that we couple malchuyot with something else. But pay attention to also that there are three brachot. It seems like zichronot stand to themselves, right? Zikaron elu zichronot. Shofarot also stands to itself, the bracha. Tuah elu shofarot. Mikra kodesh zo kedushat hayom. There is another bracha called kedushat hayom, but now there's an orphan, which is malchuyot, which we don't do as a separate bracha. We have to couple it with another bracha. We include it, Rabbi Akiva says, with Kedushat Hayom. So we have one bracha that includes both Kedushat Hayom. It is the normal bracha of Yom Tov. If I hope I'm explaining myself correct, good enough. If I'm not, then ask. Okay. So Rabbi Akiva says like this: we have one bracha that is talking about is the ordinary bracha that we would have had on any Yom Tov, that is Kedushat Hayom, and we add to that bracha Malchuyot, and then we have two other brachot, Zichronot and Shofarot. Okay, so that seems to be what we have. So that is an interesting structure. Think about it a bit. Soon we'll try to make sense out of it. Then we find the Mishnah. In the Mishnah, we have the same type of discussion. Seder brachot. What is the order of the brachot? So we have three brachot. Okay. So in the Mishnah also, we have three brachot. We have four themes, and we now have two questions. What is the order of the three brachot, and how do we cramp these four themes into three brachot? Now, why do we have four themes? Malchuyot, Zichronot, V'Shofarot, and Kedushat Hayom. So we have to somehow cramp all four into three brachot. And there is another question of what is the order of these brachot? What comes first? Zichronot, Shofarot, Malchuyot, and what comes second, etc. So that is the topic of the Mishnah. Seder brachot, Omer Avot u'Gvurot, u'Kedushat Hashem. So this first suggestion is you first say Avot, Gvurot, Kedushat Hashem. Okay, so that is the three regular brachot, the three introductory brachot. Okay, the three regular brachot that we have. Okay, then the Kolel Malchuyot Imahen. Just a minute. The Malchuyot, even before we started the three middle brachot, we already included Malchuyot where? In Akel HaKadosh, in HaMelech HaKadosh, right? That's Birkat Malchuyot. This is not what we do today, by the way. Okay, we do say HaMelech HaKadosh at the end of Kedusha, but the theme of the bracha is not Malchut, the theme is Kedusha. Okay, we'll soon explain what that means. But Rabbi Yochanan ben Uri says that's where Malchuyot goes. Ve'ino tokea, and you don't blow the shofar at this bracha. Why does it have to tell me that I'm not tokea? Why would I think that I am tokea? So let's see what Rabbi Akiva will respond in a minute. Kedushat Hayom. Then after I said Ata Kadosh, and I included Malchuyot in that bracha, I say Kedushat Hayom. There's a separate bracha, which is the ordinary bracha that I would say on any Yom Tov, the theme of Rosh Hashanah. then I'm tokea in kedushat hayom, zichronot ותוקע, שופרות ותוקע. Okay, those are the three middle brachot. דברי רבי יוחנן בן נורי. אמרנו רבי עקיבא, אם אינו תוקע למלכויות, למה הוא מזכיר? Why bother even say the psukim of malchuyot, the bracha of malchuyot? I said psukim by mistake, soon you'll see why. You'll understand why. But if you said the bracha of malchuyot together with Hakel HaKadosh, why did you say it there if you didn't blow the shofar? You have to blow the shofar with malchuyot. What does Rabbi Akiva mean? Why does Rabbi Akiva think that that's what needs to be done? Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said that it's not. So why does, okay. Ela, we'll see, we'll explain that in a moment. Ela omer avot ugvurot ugdushat Hashem. Rather, says Rabbi Akiva, he says birkat avot, gvurot, ugdushat Hashem, meaning the three introductory brachot, like any other amidah, you say it regularly. Then, vekolel malchuyot im kedushat hayom. Then the next bracha is malchuyot and kedushat Hashem, and kedushat hayom, sorry, combined together, ותוקע, זיכרונות ותוקע, שופרות ותוקע. That is what we do today. We'll soon see it inside, okay? So we call it malchuyot, zichronot, ושופרות, but the malchuyot is combined with kedushat hayom, okay? We'll see that in a moment. Now, what do we see here? So before I try to make sense of this discussion, I want to see another version of this discussion or an expansion of this discussion and then try to make sense of all this. And that is again in the Sifra. We're going back to the Sifra in source number 4, but it's continuing what we saw before. Rebbe Omer, Ima Malchuyot Omer Kedushat Hashem. Ma matzinu bechol yom bareviyit, afkan bareviyit. רבן שמעון בן גמליאל אומר קדושת היום עם הזיכרונות, מה מצינו בכל יום באמצע, אף כאן אומרה באמצע. There is a מחלוקת here. Both Rebbe and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel agree on the order of the brachot as we say them today. Meaning, we say malchuyot, zichronot, and shofarot. Those are the middle brachot. Now the question is, before the question was where to put malchuyot, right? Kedushat hayom was fixed. We weren't sure what to do with the malchuyot. We put them somewhere. Now we know where malchuyot is. The question is where to put kedushat Hashem. That is the question. So kedushat hayom. I'm sorry. Okay. So you have malchuyot, zichronot, shofarot. Where do I put kedushat hayom? So the first answer, Rebbe says, well, in malchuyot. Why? It's not that there is a thematic connection between malchuyot and kedushat hayom, or not necessarily so, but or at least not more than there is between kedushat hayom and shofarot or zichronot, but for a different reason. It's in dinei tefillah, and that is the bracha of kedushat hayom. Any other yom tov is the fourth bracha.
It's the only bracha.
Sorry?
It's the only bracha.
It's the only bracha except for the introductory, right? But it's always the fourth, right? So he says, you leave it the fourth. So in Malchuyot, you put Kedushat Hayom. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, he says, no, I don't pay attention to the number of the bracha, but to its relative situation, relative placement. It is always the middle bracha. So Malchuyot is not the middle bracha. Zichronot is the middle bracha. So therefore, that is where it should be. It should be in the with the zichron. Okay, so we have here different discussions. Putting 4 themes into 3. So and here comes my question that we asked before. Why have 3 brachot? And now it becomes even more difficult because now we find out there is a 4th theme, and that is Kedushat Hayom, that we're not sure where to put it. And Malchuyot, we're not even sure where it came from. What's going on here? What's going on here? So it seems, and this is Chazal, as I mentioned last Shiur, Chazal didn't tell us how things develop, and Chazal didn't tell us what they mean when they said things. They just said this is how it is, and we have to try and reconstruct and find meaning of what this means. So if we look at it, it's quite evident that what we have here are 2 sets of brachot that are combined. Okay. we have the Amidah of Rosh Hashana, and we have the Malchuyot, Zichronot, V'Shofarot that are a standalone set of brachot. Why am I saying that? Why would Malchuyot, Zichronot, V'Shofarot be a standalone set of brachot? So there is a mitzvah of blowing the shofar, right? Now, as many other mitzvot, the performance of the mitzvah is accompanied with brachot, right? We have Kriyat Shema. How do we perform the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema? It's accompanied with brachot. There's two brachot before, one bracha after. So too, the blowing of the shofar is accompanied with Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofarot, because, okay. Now, mitzvah shofar, what came first, mitzvah shofar or the chovah, the obligation to daven 3 times a day, and the set davening, the way Chazal were metakenet? Sorry, shofar, right? Shofar is in the Torah, right? Tfilat Amidah, whether it was chovah right away or not, it was nitkan either, right? The Gemara says Anshe Knesset Agdolah, then it was forgotten, then in Yavne, Shmuel HaKatan, okay, I'm sorry, Shimon HaPakuli, but whoever it was, what did they do? How did they blow shofar before the Amidah? So there was Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofarot, the brachot that were said with the blowing of the shofar, and then that was it. It wasn't Amidah because it wasn't introduced yet. Then Amidah was introduced, and now the question is, now how do we do, what do we do with the Amidah and the Malchuyot, and how do we combine the two? And this is what the Mishnayot and the Sifra are discussing. How do we combine the Seder Tkiot with the Seder Tfilah? Okay, that is a nice historical explanation, but what is the meaning? What is the meaning of that? That is something that we will still have to find out. When we don't blow the shofar, when it's Shabbat, we still say. Very good, very good. So I want to say something about it. That is one of the proofs that Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofarot probably stand on their own. According to Rashi, there is a discussion in the Gemara, and I'm sure many of you know this discussion, about the difference between Yom Tuah and Zichron Tuah, right? Yom Tuah is a day of Tuah, when you actually blow the shofar, and then there is Zichron Tuah, is the day when you remember the blowing of the shofar. What does that mean? So Rashi explains, or the Gemara explains, you say psukim that discuss the Tuah without doing the actual Tuah. Something like that. There are other explanations of it, but I'm just explaining it in the easy way. And when do we do that? On Shabbat, right? On Shabbat we have Zichron Tuah, we don't have Yom Tuah. So in fact, this year the first day of Rosh Hashana is Shabbat. There is no blowing of the shofar. Now there is a machloket, or so it seems. It's not so clear, but it seems between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. The Bavli tells us that the reason why we don't blow the shofar is because there is a gzeirah. Chachamim didn't want people to carry the shofar without an eruv, and therefore they said there is no blowing the shofar on Shabbat. Imagine what a koach Chachamim have, la'akor davar min haTorah, because of a chashash. Okay, seems to be the explanation in the Bavli. In the Yerushalmi, it learns it from psukim. It seems that it's a deoraita din, that on Shabbat, you don't blow the shofar. And that is the meaning, the difference between Zichron Tuah and Yom Tuah. Zichron Tuah is when you say the psukim of Tuah without blowing it, and Yom Tuah means you actually blow the shofar. But what psukim do you say in Zichron Tuah? So the Gemara explains, and Rashi says this is a din deoraita, that either with the shofar, even when you blow the shofar, or when you don't blow the shofar as Zichron Tuah, say psukei Zichronot, Malchuyot, and Shofarot. So the saying of the psukim, that is why I got confused before. You remember I said instead of bracha, birkat Malchuyot, I said psukei Malchuyot. So now you're seeing soon I'll explain where the psukim and the brachot come in. But there is a din deoraita, at least according to Rashi, according to other Rishonim, it's the Rabbanan also, but there is a mitzvah to say psukim that have to do with zichronot, malchuyot, and shofarot, and that is perhaps what the sifra that we saw is talking about. Okay, so it's talking about saying psukim that have to do with it. And then we saw Chazal, the Chazal made brachot out of everything. So these psukim is not only saying psukim, but it's already saying them as a bracha. Okay, so we say them as a bracha, but then we have the concept of tefillah, of tefillat amidah being introduced, and now the two are being fused together. The seder of malchuyot, zichronot, and shofarot, and the tefillat amidah are now being put together in some way. And the question is how exactly we do that. And for some reason, and it could be that we could understand why Chazal wanted to stay with three brachot in the middle, maybe to resemble that malchuyot, zichronot, and shofarot. That is still the theme now, but we need to bring in Kedushat Hayom in general, and where do we connect it to? And that is where the whole discussion came about. That's a good question. We'll get to it in a minute. Mamash in a minute. Okay? Yes. Right, because you came up with it exactly at the right time, right? Yes. No.
I understood wrong. You have non-brachot to match what's holiday with the love.
Right, but why dafka on Rosh Hashana? Why not? Okay, but why did he pakad on Rosh Hashana? Why not on Pesach? Okay, so it has to do with it still has to do with the theme of the day. Like how do we put this in? Okay. Okay. I mentioned the psukim. I want to see the source of mentioning the psukim, and then we will look in the tefillah inside and see how it works. So we have the Mishnah in Rosh Hashana. En pochatin me'asara malchuyot, me'asara zichronot, me'asara shofarot. This is talking about the psukim. So the minimum number of psukim we have to say are 10 psukim in each bracha. So when we say malchuyot, we say 10 psukim from the Torah that have to do with Hashem's kingship. Okay? And when we say the bracha of shofarot, we bring 10 psukim that have to do with shofarot in the Tanakh. And the same thing with zichronot. Okay. Then we have Rabbi that is, by the way, what we do. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri omer im amar shalosh mikulan yatsa. Rabbi Yochanan says actually saying 3 is enough. There is a machloket whether he means 3 of each or 3 altogether, meaning 1 each. Okay, but anyhow, we say 10 psukim. Okay, then the Mishnah gives us instructions. En mazkirin zikaron malchut v'shofar shel por'anut. When you choose whatever psukim to say, so the Mishnah doesn't tell us what psukim to say. So basically, it's at this point the Chazan, the Shliach Tzibur, decides what psukim he wants to say. So he knows that Tanakh, he has it in his head, or he has it in front of him, and he opens to the right place, whatever it is. Probably has it in his head because we're talking about before they have books, so he doesn't have the whole Megillot, and he starts looking for them as he's saying that, right? So he says psukim so what psukim you choose, so you should choose psukim that are positive, not malchut and shofar sometimes are mentioned in a negative way, so they should be in a zikaron malchut and shofar mentioned, right? For instance, Paro, when he's zocher sar haofim and hangs him, that's a bad zikaron. We don't want to have that zikaron, right? Or other such things. So we don't want zikaron shel pu'anot. We want zikaron positive zichronot, okay, etc. with malchuyot shofarot as well. So what does it mean that the brachot are with psukim? I think what it means is that it is not just something that we say. We connect what we say to the entire. It's not in this source, but later we'll see in the tefillah we have 3, and then an extra one from the Torah. 3 from the Torah, 3 from Nevi'im, 3 from Ketuvim. Actually, Ketuvim come first. 3 from in this order usually, and then 3 from the Nevi'im, and then another one from the Torah. And there is a significance in it. we'll try and understand it in a moment. I want to first, at this point, I want to look into the Machzor. Whoever of you who have a Machzor here, it would be helpful to look inside, and we will look open to the beginning of the Amidah of Mussaf of Rosh Hashana. There are, yes. Actually, there are Machzorim at the very top. There are Machzorim. Oh, okay. Maybe at the bottom.
It's an hour code.
Oh, it's an hour. Oh, okay. I found this one on the other. No, the other bookcase is also all Yom Kippur. I found this one Rosh Hashana that was there, but maybe there's another one. I'm not sure. Okay. Anyhow, but you'll understand what I'm saying even without having the Machzor. It would be nice with the Machzor, but okay. So I want you to open at the beginning of the silent Amidah, not the repetition, and I'll explain why. Because as I said at the very beginning, the repetition has a lot of piyutim, so it would be more difficult to see the skeleton of the tefillah. But we are talking about the same tefillah. The repetition is exactly the same as the actual tefillah. It just has piyutim added to it, and the piyutim are later. They're not part of the actual structure. So we're now trying to figure out the structure. So we have the Amidah opening with Birkat Avot, then Birkat Gvurot, Beitim. Now we do have the psukim, the special psukim that we say in Aseret Yemei Tshuva that we're going to discuss in a later shiur. But okay, but you see the structure is here, and then we have Kedushat Hashem. Now to the Bracha Kedushat Hashem, we have an addition. Uvechen ten pachdecha, uvechen ten kavod, and we end it with Hamelech HaKadosh. So here we have somewhat, these are traces of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. We don't have the psukei malchuyot, which are the main thing of malchut in Kedushat Hashem, but we do mention malchut also here. Okay, v'timloch ata Hashem levadecha. So because we have traces of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri here. Okay, then we go to Kedushat Hayom u'malchuyot. Okay, the next bracha after Kedushat Hayom is after Kedushat Hashem, I'm sorry, is Kedushat Hayom u'malchuyot. Now, Kedushat Hashem ends with Hamelech HaKadosh, because again, Malchut is traces of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, but also Malchut is a thing on Rosh Hashana. We'll have to figure out why. And we have Kedushat Hayom, so it starts with Ata b'chartan mikol amim, like any other Yom Tov. That is Kedushat Hayom, right? So it starts with Kedushat Hayom. So again, like any other Yom Tov. So far, it's the Nusach of Yad. This is the usual Mussaf of Yom Tov, right? And then and we will do this, and then it says the Korbanot, like any other Yom Tov, right? It brings the psukim of the Korbanot, like any other Yom Tov, where we bring the psukim of Korbanot. So far, there is no difference between this davening and any other Yom Tov, right? The different libations that we bring, and then on Shabbat we have Yismechu v'Malchutcha, like any other Yom Tov that is on Shabbat, we would bring it in, and then we have Aleinu L'Shabeach. All of a sudden, Aleinu L'Shabeach comes in. This is the beginning of, this is the introduction to Malchuyot. Aleinu L'Shabeach l'Adonai Kol, Atet Gdula Yitzer Be'eshit, okay? And then Al Ken Ekavelecha, etc. And it ends with the Aleinu, right? V'kablu kulam et ol malchutecha, v'timloch aleim era le'olam v'ed, ki ha'malchut shelcha hi u'le'olmei timloch b'chavod. This was all an introduction to Malchuyot. And now comes the psukim of Malchuyot. Ka'katuv b'toratecha, Hashem yimloch le'olam v'ed. That is the first pasuk from the Torah. Then we have two more psukim from the Torah. V'nemar lo yibita avinu Yaakov, v'nemar v'yibishun melech v'yitasef hasheyam. And then we have three psukim from Ketuvim, right? Three psukim, and then three other psukim from the Nevi'im. And we conclude with the 10th pasuk, last pasuk from the Torah. Going back to the Torah.
Doesn't mention Malchut.
Very good. Very good. So that is something that is out of the scope of this shiur, and I won't get to it. And I want to conclude, but very good observation. But that is the last pasuk that we have. Okay, then we have a conclusion of the bracha. It ends with a tefillah. So a tefillah that has to do with malchuyot. So we had an introduction to malchuyot. We had the psukim of malchuyot. Then we had a tefillah that summarizes it all, asking Hashem to show His kingship, and now we are about to conclude. But note that all this was after we mentioned Kedushat Hayom at the beginning. So we had Kedushat Hayom, Malchuyot in all one bracha, and now the conclusion of the bracha has to mention both Kedushat Hayom and Malchuyot. So that is exactly what happens. So after Meloch al Kol Haolam Kulo, we have all of a sudden we go back to the ordinary Yom Tov, right? קדשנו מצוותיך, תן חלקנו בתורתך, זבנו בטובך, וזנחנו בשועתך, ותאר ליבנו עבדך באמת, כי אתה אלוקים אמת, right? So that is already an ordinary Yom Tov, right? Because now we're concluding both. We concluded Malchuyot, we are going back to Kedushat Hayom, we are concluding that as well. And then, כי אתה אלוקים אמת, ודברך אמת וקיים לעד, ברוך אתה השם. Two things. Melech al kol haaretz, because we're just said Malchuyot, Mekadesh Yisrael v'Yom HaZikaron. That is like we would do every Yom Tov Kedushat Hayom, Mekadesh Yisrael and the Chag. So this is what we say here. So this is the first bracha. And then we have Zichronot. So here Zichronot, we don't have already Kedushat Hayom. We took care of that before. This is only Zichronot. So we have an introduction to Zichronot. So we first explain to Hashem, what is it that we're doing here? We say, you're the one that remembers. And then we say everything about it, and then we conclude with Kakatuv b'Toratecha, or we go in from the introduction to Kakatuv b'Toratecha, and we bring the psukim. Meaning, we said to Hashem everything about His being a zikaron. Then we say the psukim, and we have all the psukim as in the same structure as we had in Zichronot, and then again. Now we have a summarizing of a tefillah that has to do with Zichronot. Okay, so the introduction is telling Hashem that He remembers, then bringing psukim to back that statement, and then now that Hashem, we know you remember, we're asking you, please remember. Okay, and that is what we conclude the bracha with. And again, Ki zocher kol hanishkachot, and Baruch Ata Hashem, Zocher Habrit. So that is that. Okay. Then the next one is Shofarot. Again, we have an introduction, Ata Nigleta, and then we have the Psukim, and then we have a conclusion, which is asking Hashem to, do what you do with the shofar. Lo the shofar, lecherutenu, etc. Baruch Ata Hashem, Shomea Kol Turat Amo Yisrael, Berachamim. Okay, so we had Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofarot. Okay. Now, the question is, what is the meaning? What is Malchuyot? What is Zichronot? What is Shofarot? What does it have to do with Rosh Hashana? So, okay, Zichron Torah, we know, Malchuyot, somehow we brought it into the Zuki, but what is the meaning of all this? So this is an idea I heard from Rav Meidan, and he says the following. Rosh Hashanah is referred to in many places as Yom Hadin. Where did that come from? So he spoke about Zichronot, Malchuyot, Shofarot, Din. Where did Din come from? So it's quite clear where the Din come from. Zikaron and Din go together. And if we look through the Tanakh, Sefer HaZichronot, Lifnei HaMelech, Sefer HaZichronot is the Sefer of the Bigtan V'Teresh are in Sefer HaZichronot because they were trialed and hung. So, Sarah Ofim and Sarah Mashkim, when they are nizkar in front of Paro, they are nizkar in order to be judged, trialed, and sentenced. So zikaron has to be done quite clear in that in many places in the Tanakh has to be with, well, it's also natural, right? You remember someone, meaning you look into them, right? To remember is not to, oh, I just remembered something. It's to lifkod, lizkor, it's to pay attention to something. So Hashem pays attention to us. That's a scary thing. Hashem is judging us, right? When I pay attention to someone, then usually I judge it. I evaluate it. I look at it, right, in such a way that I evaluate it. That is judging. So in a very strong sense, Yom HaZikaron, as we refer to it in the Tefillah, because it's Zichron Torah, has to do with, that's the day that Hashem remembers us in the sense of judging us. But what does that mean that Hashem judges us? It means that we're responsible, okay? It means that we're responsible. Now, if I'm responsible, then that is a very scary notion, because someone might mistakenly get the idea that Hashem created the world, put me here, and went away to attend to his business. And now I'm responsible, and I'm alone, and I'm here. And now we, humanity, have to run this place. Now, we know that we make a mess of anything we touch, right? Not only we, like humanity in general, right? Look at the world. It doesn't look like that. We wouldn't want human beings to run the world. It's a terrible place when human beings run. Okay, sometimes we achieve things, right? But generally also, I mean, we read the news, it's very scary, right? Very scary. Who knows what crazy thing would someone do in a minute? If the presidents and prime ministers that we know of the different empires, they run the world, it's a very scary idea. And if I run my own life, that's also very scary, because I know I don't make such a good job of that. So this is where Malchuyot come as a balance to Zichronot. We still have to understand a bit more than that. I'm now just giving the framework. Malchuyot basically says, yes, we are responsible, and in a way we're in charge, but there is a big boss that looks after us. There is Hashem that is the king, okay? And here I want to say something a bit deeper about Malchuyot. Do you remember last week we spoke about the bracha? Right? Okay. Now what is the bracha? So we said, Rav Soloveitchik, what does it mean that we bless Hashem? So Hashem is able to do everything, but only one thing he's not able to do, and that is make us recognize him. That is up to our choice, our will. Hashem gave us b'chira chofshit, and that's why humanity decides whether it recognizes Hashem or not. Now, that is also why it's so crucial in the bracha. If you remember, we say Melech HaOlam. We recognize Hashem as king. That is the essence of the bracha. So we pray. Why? Because king, okay, a king is something very specific. A king is not a king if he's not recognized. There are different things in the world, right? There are two types of things in the world. There are certain things that they're let's call, I'll use a fancy word. Their ontology doesn't depend on anyone's epistemology, right? There are certain things that are what they are, independent of whether people recognize what they are or not. So let's say there's a cup of coffee there. Let's say I say it's not a cup of coffee, so it won't be a cup of coffee. Let's say everyone in the world says this is not a cup of coffee. Does that make it not a cup of coffee? It doesn't matter what anyone would say. This is a cup of coffee, right? Whether we recognize it or not. Okay, now what about, let's give another example. Money. Money is money. Let's say if I say it's not money, then it's still money. But let's say if everyone says it's not money, is it still money? No, it's not money, right? What makes it money is the fact that we say it's money, and if we don't say it, it won't be money, right? There are certain things that depend on what we say they are. If we decide, and how it happens, it doesn't matter. But if we decide it is it, and everyone agrees upon it, then that's what it is. And if we don't, then it's not. King is one of those things, right? If someone puts on a cloak and a and a crown and goes out and walks down the street like a king, he's not a king, he's a clown, right? What makes him a king? If everyone says this is the king. If everyone says this is the king, he's not a clown anymore. He's now a king. So for Hashem to be king, Hashem needs to be recognized. Okay? So Hashem could be many things, but we want him to be king. And when we say king, we mean we want Hashem's sovereignty. Hashem is sovereign whether we recognize it or not. That is not the question. But the question is he king? And king means he is in our minds. He's the sovereign. Okay? And that is crucial. And that is why Malchut is so important in the bracha, and it's so connected to the very concept of bracha. The one thing we are able to do, well, it's dangerous to say it that way. I'm saying it provocatively on purpose, but we are able to do that. Hashem is not able to kivayachol. Well, if Hashem doesn't give us strength to do it, we're not able to do it. But Hashem gave us the power to choose and to recognize it. Right? So when we recognize him, we make him king. That's the very, okay. So on Rosh Hashana, we tell Hashem, look, you made us responsible. In that same sense, we are responsible. We're responsible for what? Well, it depends. Our responsibility could be tamed by your kingship, by your sovereignty. And that is where Malchut comes in. And we say, on the one hand, we are responsible. On the other hand, we recognize that our responsibility cannot really be without you looking after us, because we're too stupid to run the world on our own. We recognize that you are the one that has to be there, guide us and help us in all of our endeavors. And why is it so important? Why can't we fuse these into one bracha? It is because the very let's call it the main, what we might call avodat Hashem, lies between the tension of zichronot and malchuyot. If I have only malchuyot, meaning I say, Hashem, you're the king, I surrender to you, that's it. Now I'm not responsible for anything. You're responsible for everything. Then that is hefkerut. That is not a true religious life. On the other hand, if I say, I'm the only one responsible, Hashem put me here, I'm in charge, Hashem went away, that's it. Well, that is also not living a religious life. That is living a lie. I'm not capable of being responsible on my own. Just recognizing the two, recognizing the malchut on the one hand and the zicharon on the other, I am in charge, but only with Hashem's help am I able to do anything. That is where we're able to somehow live our lives. And now, what regulates the tension between these two is the shofar. Now, how it does that is what we're going to see next week when we're going to discuss the shofar. The shofar is a magical instrument. It somehow manages to balance between the malchuyot and the zichronot. So I went a bit longer than I meant to go today, but it was an important shiur, I think, because it gives us really the structure of what Rosh Hashana is all about. And together with next shiur, we'll really know what it's all about. So I'll just summarize very quickly what I said. Rosh Hashanah, why? Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofarot. And then we found out somehow also Kedushat Hayom. So first of all, structurally, we have here two sets of brachot, the blowing of the shofar and the tefillah fused into one. Next week, we'll discuss why was it fused into one. We'll see that it makes a lot of sense. And why three? Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofarot. So we mentioned Malchuyot as making Hashem king, Zichronot, we are judged, and the two are very important to recognize. Each one is crucial and essential because the one without the other takes us in the wrong direction, and the shofar, that is the main instrument of Rosh Hashanah, balances exactly between these two, and how it does so, we'll see Be'ezrat Hashem next week. Good then.
That's the